The letter arrived on my 71st birthday. Inside was a single wheat stalk wrapped in twine, no note, nothing else. Just that solitary stalk from what used to be 6,000 acres of prime Nebraska farmland that had been in my family for 4 generations. Land I'd spent my entire life cultivating. Land I'd entrusted to my grandson Jake with one simple request: keep the farm in the family. 2 weeks after my heart attack, while I was still in rehab, he sold everything, the equipment, the silos, the homestead, every acre, to a corporate farming conglomerate for $6 million. And now, 6 months later, this wheat stalk was apparently supposed to mean something to me. I stared at it, this final insult from the boy I'd practically raised after his father, my son, died in that combine accident 15 years ago. The boy who now owned a penthouse in Chicago while I lived in this assisted living facility on the edge of town, watching bulldozers tear up our family legacy through my window. What Jake didn't know was that I wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot, and I had one last card to play. The Caldwell farm wasn't just land, it was our identity. My grandfather homesteaded it during the Dust Bowl, refusing to leave even when the topsoil blew away. My father expanded it during the boom years after World War II. I modernized it through the farm crisis of the 1980s when foreclosures were swallowing up our neighbors left and right. We survived drought, floods, and market crashes that bankrupted farms twice our size. Folks around Lancaster County knew the Caldwells as survivors. My wife Elaine and I raised our only son, Michael, to understand what the land meant. He was brilliant, first in our family to go to college, but he came back with his agricultural degree to work alongside me. "This soil is in my blood, Dad," he'd say. When he married Kate, a city girl from Omaha, I worried she'd pull him away, but she embraced farm life completely. They gave us Jake, our only grandchild. Then came the accident, a jammed auger on the combine. Michael always was too impatient. He climbed in without shutting down the machine completely. I found him. Some nights I still wake up hearing those sounds. Kate couldn't bear to stay after that. She moved back to Omaha, remarried a few years later. But Jake, he was 12 then, begged to spend summers with us. "I want to learn the farm, Grandpa," he said. So every June he'd arrive for 3 months of tractor driving, irrigation management, and long talks on the porch about crop rotation and soil management. I taught him everything I knew. When he graduated high school, Jake shocked everyone by turning down his Ivy League scholarship. "The farm is my future," he told his mother. Kate called me, furious. "You've brainwashed him," she accused. But it was Jake's decision. By then, Elaine had passed. Breast cancer took her quickly, and I was grateful for Jake's company. For 10 years, we worked side by side. I gradually handed him more responsibility, and he seemed to thrive. He modernized our irrigation systems, implemented precision agriculture techniques, and our yields increased by nearly 30%. The Caldwell farm was becoming a showpiece in the state. There were warning signs, though. Jake's frustrations with rural life would surface occasionally. "There's nothing to do in this town, Grandpa," he'd complain. Or I'd catch him scrolling through social media, looking at former classmates living glamorous lives in big cities. Once, after returning from a farm technology conference in Chicago, he was quiet for days. "Everything all right, son?" I asked. "Just thinking about opportunities," he replied. I should have pressed harder. Instead, I decided to make the grand gesture I thought would secure our legacy. On his 30th birthday, I transferred ownership of the entire operation to him. The farmhouse, equipment, and all 6,000 acres, worth about $6 million. I kept only a life estate in the farmhouse for myself. "This farm is your inheritance," I told him at our favorite diner in town, sliding the paperwork across the table. "All I ask is that you keep it in the family. This land isn't just dirt and crops, it's our history." Jake hugged me, tears in his eyes. "I promise, Grandpa, the Caldwell farm will always be here." 6 months later, I had the heart attack while checking irrigation pivots in the north field. I was alone for hours before Jake found me. The doctor said I was lucky to survive. What I didn't know then was that Jake had already been in talks with Heartland Agricultural Investments. The heart attack just gave him the opportunity he'd been waiting for. Recovery was slow. The doctors insisted I needed round-the-clock care, so Jake arranged for me to stay at Meadowbrook Assisted Living temporarily. I hated every minute: the scheduled meals, the patronizing activities director, the smell of disinfectant covering up the scent of decay. But I didn't argue. "Just until you're back on your feet, Grandpa," Jake assured me. 3 weeks in, I noticed Jake wasn't visiting as regularly. When he did come, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone. One afternoon, he arrived with a stack of papers. "Just some farm management stuff that needs your signature," he explained, "equipment insurance and tax forms." I trusted him completely. Signed without reading, a mistake I've replayed in my mind 1,000 times since. The first hint something was wrong came from Hank Myers, my neighbor of 40 years, who stopped by Meadowbrook with a pecan pie Marge had baked. "Saw some surveyors out on your east field yesterday," he mentioned casually. "Jake expanding the irrigation?" I hadn't heard about any surveyors. "Probably," I shrugged, but something felt off. A week later, Bill Thompson from the bank visited. We'd done business together for decades, and his discomfort was palpable as he settled into the vinyl visitor chair in my room. "Howard, I wanted to come by personally," he began, clearing his throat, "given our history." "What is it, Bill?" "The loan approval came through yesterday for Heartland Agricultural Investments for the purchase of the Caldwell property." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "There must be some mistake," I said. "Jake would never sell the farm." Bill wouldn't meet my eyes. "The paperwork has his signature, Howard, and yours." Those farm management documents I'd signed without reading. Blood roared in my ears as Bill explained that Heartland had been pursuing family farms throughout the county, consolidating them into massive operations. They'd offered Jake well above market value. "I'm sorry, Howard. The sale closes next week." After Bill left, I called Jake repeatedly, straight to voicemail. I tried to get up, to get back to the farm, but my chest seized with pain. The nurse found me collapsed halfway to the door. When Jake finally appeared 2 days later, he was wearing a tailored suit I'd never seen before. "What have you done?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. "I've secured our future, Grandpa," he said, pulling up a chair. "Farming isn't sustainable for small operations anymore. One bad season, one market crash, and we'd lose everything." "That farm survived the Dust Bowl and the '80s crisis," I countered. "We always found a way." "Times have changed," Jake said. "Corporate agriculture is the future. I got $6 million, enough to secure both our retirements and launch my investment career." "You promised to keep the farm in the family." His expression hardened. "I'm doing what's best for the family, for both of us." "You're breaking a promise to your father, to generations of Caldwells." Jake stood up, jaw tight. "Dad's dead, and those generations you're so worried about, they're just ghosts, Grandpa. I'm alive, and I deserve a future beyond endless work for minimal returns." "That farm survived the Dust Bowl and the '80s crisis," I countered. "We always found a way." "Times have changed," Jake said. "Corporate agriculture is the future. I got $6 million, enough to secure both our retirements and launch my investment career." "You promised to keep the farm in the family." His expression hardened. I'm doing what's best for the family, for both of us. You're breaking a promise to your father, to generations of Caldwells. Jake stood up, jaw tight. Dad's dead, and those generations you're so worried about, they're just ghosts, Grandpa. I'm alive, and I deserve a future beyond endless work for minimal returns. He explained he'd arranged for me to stay permanently at Meadowbrook, all expenses covered. He'd be moving to Chicago, where he had connections from the Farm Technology Conference. You'll have everything you need here, he insisted. Except my dignity. Except my home. The farmhouse was falling apart anyway, he dismissed. Heartland's tearing it down next month. That's when I told him about the secret, the real legacy hidden on the farm. I saw doubt flicker across his face, quickly replaced with skepticism. You're making this up to stop the sale, he accused. Your father knew, I said quietly. He was going to tell you when you turned 35. Prove it, Jake challenged. Take me to the farm. One last time. He refused. The doctors wouldn't approve it, he claimed. The sale was already final. There was nothing to be done. As he left, he paused at the door. I've set up a trust for you. You'll never have to worry about money again. Money was never what that farm was about, I said. And if you go through with this, you are no longer my grandson. The farmhouse was demolished the following week. I watched the local news coverage from my bed at Meadowbrook, tears streaming down my face as bulldozers tore through the home where 4 generations of Caldwells had been born and died. The century-old oak tree my father planted on my birthday was uprooted to make way for an equipment garage. Jake didn't call, didn't visit. 3 months passed, then 6. And then, on my 71st birthday, the envelope arrived with that single stalk of wheat. That wheat stalk was the final straw. I'd spent 6 months stewing in that assisted living facility, watching through the window as corporate tractors tore up our family fields. I'd made some friends at Meadowbrook. Doris, who taught high school math for 40 years. Frank, who still wore his Korean War veteran cap daily. But they weren't family. I called Marge Myers that afternoon. I need a favor, I told her, and Hank's truck. 2 days later, I was sitting in the passenger seat of Hank's Ford F-150, heading toward what used to be our farm. My heart medication was in my pocket, along with a folded county newspaper article I'd been saving. You sure about this, Howard? Hank asked as we pulled up to the massive new Heartland Agricultural Industries sign. Never been more sure of anything in my life. The annual Lancaster County Agricultural Association dinner was being held in the newly constructed Heartland Conference Center, built right where my grandfather's original homestead cabin had stood. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jake would be there. The newspaper had run a feature about him last week, the visionary young businessman who was being honored for the largest agricultural land transaction in county history. Hank helped me through the door. Inside, round tables were filled with the county's farming families and business leaders. At the front, on a raised platform, sat Jake alongside Heartland's executives. He froze mid-conversation when he spotted me. I nodded to Hank, who helped me make my way slowly to the center of the room. Conversations quieted as people recognized me. Many nodded respectfully. The Caldwell name still meant something to the old families. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I apologize for interrupting your dinner. I'm Howard Caldwell." A murmur went through the crowd. Jake was half standing now, panic visible on his face across the room. "Most of you knew my family's farm. 4 generations worked that land. My grandfather, my father, myself, and my son Michael, who died trying to save that year's harvest." The room went completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had paused to listen. "My grandson Jake sold our legacy to Heartland Industries 6 months ago. He's being honored here tonight for that transaction."
Jake was moving toward me now, weaving between tables. "Grandpa, you shouldn't be here. You're not well," he said urgently when he reached me. I ignored him, addressing the room. What Jake didn't know, what I tried to tell him, was that the farm held more than just wheat and corn. I pulled out the newspaper clipping and unfolded it carefully. This article from 1934 tells about my grandfather's discovery during the Dust Bowl. While digging a new well, he found something embedded in the clay 30 feet down. Jake grabbed my arm. "Grandpa, stop! There's nothing." "A meteorite," I continued loudly, "nearly intact. Approximately 200 pounds of iron and nickel with rare mineral compounds." The Heartland executives were standing now. My grandfather consulted a geologist from the university who confirmed its scientific value, but warned him that the government might claim it if reported. So he kept it secret, reburied it under the old oak by the house, marked its location on a map he passed to my father, who passed it to me. "This is ridiculous," Jake hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself. There was never any meteorite." I turned to face him directly. "Your father knew. The night before the accident, we discussed when to tell you. We decided when you turned 35, old enough to understand its value beyond money." Jake's face drained of color. "You're lying." "The meteorite was worth millions, Jake. Scientific institutions would have paid handsomely for it. But it was our family's legacy, something to preserve for future generations. Something that couldn't be sold or squandered." The lead Heartland executive approached us. "Mr. Caldwell, is this true?" "The meteorite was buried directly beneath the old oak tree," I said. "The one your company uprooted to build this very building." Gasps rippled through the room. The executive's face hardened. "Our geological surveys showed nothing unusual." "Did you dig 30 feet down under that specific spot?" I asked. "The meteorite isn't metal enough to trigger standard equipment. It requires specialized detection." The man turned to Jake. "You said nothing about this." "Because it's not true," Jake insisted. "He's confused, elderly, making up stories." I pulled one last item from my pocket, a small glass vial containing a sliver of metallic rock. "This fragment has been in our family's safe deposit box since 1934. Have it analyzed if you don't believe me." The executive took the vial, examining it under the light. "The meteorite is gone now," I continued, addressing the entire room, "likely destroyed when your equipment tore up the oak's root system. Or maybe it's buried under this very building. A scientific treasure lost forever because my grandson couldn't wait for me to die before selling our history to strangers." I looked directly at Jake. "I came here tonight to tell you that you didn't just sell land, Jake. You destroyed something priceless, something that could have secured our family's legacy for generations in a way that money never could." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving Jake standing speechless amid whispers and stares. Hank helped me into his truck, and we drove away from what used to be home. The next morning, I awoke to chaos. My room at Meadowbrook was suddenly the epicenter of activity. First came the local newspaper reporter, whom I politely but firmly asked to leave. Then 3 calls from the Heartland executives, which I ignored. Around noon, Doris knocked on my door. "Howard, your grandson's in the lobby. Should I tell him to go away? Frank says he'll run interference if you want." I appreciated my newfound defenders. "No, Doris, send him up." Jake looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, still wearing last night's rumpled dress shirt. He stood awkwardly in my doorway. "Is it true," he asked without preamble, "about the meteorite?" I gestured to the chair beside my bed. "Sit down, Jake." He did, running his hands through his hair. "Heartland's lawyers are in crisis mode. They're talking about lawsuits, breach of disclosure requirements. They think I deliberately concealed valuable assets." "And did you?" I asked calmly. "How could I disclose something I didn't know about?" His voice rose. "You never told me, not once in all those years working together." "Your father and my father's been dead 15 years, Grandpa. You had plenty of time to tell me." I let the silence settle between us. Finally, I asked, "What do you want from me, Jake?" "I need you to tell them the truth, that there was no meteorite, that you made it all up to humiliate me." I studied my grandson's face, Michael's eyes, Elaine's chin, my father's strong nose. Family features recycled through generations. "I can't do that," I said softly. "Why not?" he demanded. "Haven't you punished me enough?" "I'm not punishing you, Jake. I'm teaching you the same lesson my grandfather taught my father and my father taught me." Confusion replaced anger on his face. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my nightstand drawer and pulled out a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "This is my grandfather's diary. Read the entry from April 15th, 1934. Jake took it hesitantly, finding the page. His eyes widened as he read. "Today I told Joseph the story of the meteorite," he read aloud, "just as my father told me when I considered selling during the worst dust storms. The land holds our future, not just in crops, but in legacy. The meteorite story stopped him from leaving, as it stopped me. The Caldwell farm continues." He looked up, understanding dawning. "There never was a meteorite." I nodded. "It's a family story, passed down through generations. A parable about what might be lost when you give up on the land too quickly. Each Caldwell man was told the story when he considered abandoning the farm during hard times." "But you gave me the farm," Jake said. "You weren't testing me." "No," I agreed. "I trusted you completely. That was my mistake." Jake set the diary down. "So last night you deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone, cost me my business relationships?" "I told a family story that should have been yours to keep, not yours to disprove." I met his gaze steadily. "The farm is gone, Jake. That can't be undone. But you needed to understand what you truly gave away." He stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "This is insane. You destroyed my reputation over a fake family legend?" "Did I?" I asked. "Or did you destroy our family's legacy over money you didn't need?" That stopped him. He sank back into the chair. "What happened to the money, Jake?" I asked gently. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I invested most of it. Chicago real estate, mainly." "And how's that working out?" His silence told me everything. "The market crashed last month," he finally admitted. "I lost a lot." "The farm would have weathered that storm," I observed, "like it weathered all the others." Tears welled in his eyes.
I was trying to build something bigger, something that would make you proud. I was already proud of you, I said quietly. Every day you chose to stay on that land. Jake wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "What do I do now, Grandpa? Heartland won't work with me again. The local farmers all think I'm either a liar or a fool. I can't go back to farming without land." I thought about Michael, about how he would want me to handle this moment with his son. "There's a farm for sale in Jefferson County," I said. "The Schmidts are retiring. 800 acres, good soil. Nothing fancy, but solid. I've made some calls." Jake looked up. "Why would you help me after what I did?" "Because you're family, and family forgives, even when it's hard." I reached for his hand. "You sent me a wheat stalk, Jake. One single stalk. Do you know what that made me think of?" He shook his head. "It reminded me that from one seed, properly tended, an entire field can grow again." 2 months later, I moved into the small guest house on Jake's new farm. It's nothing like our old place. The house needs work, the equipment is outdated, and the fields require intensive rehabilitation after years of chemical farming. But it's a start. Jake works from sunrise to sunset. I offer advice when asked,
stay quiet when not. We're relearning each other, finding a new balance. Last week, he planted a young oak tree in the front yard. For the next generation, he said, whether there's a meteorite under it or not. Yesterday, I caught him explaining crop rotation to a group of visiting agriculture students. Farming isn't just about this season's profit, he told them. It's about what you leave in the soil for those who come after you. I smiled, hearing echoes of my father's words. Some lessons, it seems, can take root even after the harshest winter. The meteorite story served its purpose, as it did for generations before. Not as scientific fact, but as family truth. Some things, once lost, can never be replaced. But with care and patience, new growth is always possible. As I sit on the porch of Jake's farmhouse, watching the sunset over fields that aren't quite ours yet, but someday will be, I can't help but reflect on how close we came to losing everything that matters. Not the money or the land itself, but the connection to something larger than ourselves. 4 generations of wisdom nearly vanished because we confused value with price. Jake joins me some evenings, and we talk about real things now. His struggles with the bank, his plans for organic certification, his hopes to someday pass this new legacy to children he doesn't yet have. The wheat is coming in strong this season. Different soil, different challenges, but the same essential work my grandfather taught my father, who taught me, who taught Jake's father, who would be proud of the man his son is becoming. That single wheat stalk sits in a frame on my wall, a reminder that family roots, once severed, can find new soil. That forgiveness, while never easy, yields the richest harvest of all. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to this channel for more family stories that explore the complicated, messy, beautiful bonds that shape us. Like this video if you've ever had to rebuild something you thought was lost forever. Remember, sometimes what appears to be an ending is simply the first seed of a new beginning. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.